Welcome to another episode of Dad Up, everyone. Thank you guys very much for joining me. I'm excited to welcome my new guest today. He and I have just recently got connected, and so I'm really interested in hearing more about his backstory and kind of how he grew up and all that, and I'm sure you are as well. My good friend, Dr. Jason Plunkett, has joined me on Dad Up. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Cool. You know, you and I have recently got connected, so I don't know a whole lot about your background. I mean, obviously,
Yeah,
we just got connected in the last couple of weeks, so I'm really curious to dive in and kind of, for my fans who don't know who you are, let's dive into a little bit of back history about you, kind of how you grew up, and then also about what you're doing now, and also this is a data podcast, so I want to know about your family as well.
perfect. Just so you know, I've actually been following you for a little bit, for over a year now. You had
Oh,
my friend on, Alan Smith, from
oh
Saving
yeah,
Innocence. He combat
yeah,
human trafficking. So he and I worked together. His nonprofit worked with my nonprofit at the time, combating human trafficking in Los Angeles. So when I saw him on your podcast, that's when I started following your podcast.
Oh, awesome.
So I love
Awesome.
what you
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Alan's a good dude. Yeah, he's doing great work out here in LA. He and I have been meaning to meet up for a while now, and we keep missing each other, but I think he wants to have lunch with me because he wants to get me kind of incorporated into what he's doing, because I would love to kind of help out and all that. It's just we haven't been able to totally get our schedules to line up. Well, awesome. So how did you get into that side of things, and how did that all happen with Alan?
Yeah, so I'll start that, then I'll reverse engineer it, then I'll tell you kind of
Cool.
where it came from. But so I started with a nonprofit organization called Zoe International, and I was the United States director for that. And in Los Angeles, we're combating human trafficking from prevention, rescue, and restoration. Uh, Alan and his organization was doing the rescue even before we did within Los Angeles. We've been doing the work for 20 years in Thailand and Mexico and Japan, Australia. But he and I met because we're some of the only men really fighting this. I mean, there's a lot of men
Mhm.
in it, but I mean, being a voice said we want to end it, and we're talking about fathers. So our hearts are tethered together. I love him. Everything he does is amazing. He's an amazing man of God. Just an amazing leader, and Saving Innocence is an amazing organization. So that's how we connect. That's how we got connected.
That's
But
awesome.
my story, so I born and raised. I often when I'm on podcasts, I say the same thing. Born and raised on a playground where I spent most of my days, because that's just what literally life was. Really, I'm the only child. I do have siblings, but they were in a different country. So I'm from Los Angeles by way of Belize, Central America. My
Okay.
mother and father are from Belize, and also I have family members like my grandparents are from Jamaica. So as much as I'm black, I'm actually the first African American in my family.
Hmm.
So I had to study the history of African American history really just to even teach my kids.
Right.
So that in of itself is a different story. Just because I look just black, so I was like, oh, you're
Right.
African American, but really no history behind it other than me being born here.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. How many
So
kids? Yeah, how many kids you
I have
got?
four,
Four.
four kids, 21, 16, 13, 8, and a year and a half year old grandson
Oh, that's so awesome. Very
from the
cool.
grandpa.
Oh, wow. Grandpa Plunkett. Grandpa
Yeah,
Jason.
pop, pop,
What do you go by?
pop, pop, pop. I have all these different titles. I used to be a pastor, right? I'm learning how to fly a plane. So hopefully I'll be captain one day. And so I have the doctorate degree called doctor. But I tell everyone my favorite title is Papa. Like no matter what, all the other things. I used to be a pastor, minister, whatever. Papa outweighs it all. That's my
Uh,
favorite.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, obviously you got a busy household with a wide range of ages that you're dealing with. And you used to be a pastor as well. How big is faith in your guys' family? I mean, I'm sure it's pretty big, and we can talk about that because, you and I were kind of talking about it a little bit off the air, but
Yeah.
my wife and I wanted our boys. I didn't grow up in faith. I actually, what I like to tell
Mhm.
people is I actually experienced a lot of different religions out there because I had
Okay.
friends that were in different organizations, and I used to just go to church with them because I just wanted to hang out with my friends. I didn't really know anything about how a relationship with God and all that. My parents weren't religious. We didn't go to church ever. So I've spent time in the Catholic Church. I've spent time in non-denominational church, Christian church. I've spent time in the Mormon church. So I've
Oh,
had this kind of this
that's a
wide
good experience.
range. But yeah, and when my wife and I had kids, we realized, she grew up she was Catholic. She grew up Catholic. We realized how important it was for our boys to really have that quality
Yeah.
relationship and really understand the Heavenly Father. And so we wanted our boys to have that. And that's why we got them started really early. We found a church here locally, and my boys to this day still have a relationship. We still go to church. So, and they're 25 and
Wow.
22. So,
Nice.
they've kept that going. But for you guys, I mean, how important is that for you guys and your family?
It's foundational. We based our entire relationship. My wife's and I's marriage is based on faith, and we then based the family on top of that. So it's foundational. I came to know God at 6 years old.
Mm.
I was watching. Do you remember Jim Swaggart? Have you ever?
Hmm.
I know you. Have you heard of him? Right. So he
Yep.
was a televangelist and was
Hmm.
caught with a prostitute and all this other stuff. Right. But I mean, all that he was identified as wrong. I must say, I love Jim Swaggart because there's two times he brought me to Christ, and the first time I was 6, and he made the statement that says, if you don't have a dad, then God could be your dad. And then he said, and if you do have a dad, he might be amazing, but God is even more amazing. And at the time, I didn't grow up with my dad. So my dad was still in Belize. So I grew up without a father my entire life.
Mm.
And so I was 6. My son's 8. So for me to fathom the fact that I was 6 was kind of crazy that I was even aware of that. So I said, okay, God, can you be my dad? You just random little
Yeah.
child prayer. Can you be my dad? And that's when I heard the voice of God says, I am your dad.
Huh.
I was like, oh. And from that point on, me understanding what fatherhood really means, and the way I was fathered by him, and the way I father was from that perspective alone.
Mm.
In that moment he had told me that his name is Emmanuel, because I asked him, well, then what's your name? Like, if you're my dad, I don't even know your name. What's your name? And he said Emmanuel. Right. So this is the funny joke. That from I was 6 to I was about 13, I thought God was Mexican, because all my friends name Emmanuel. We call him Manny. What's up, Manny? What's up? How you doing, Manny? Type of thing. And they were all Mexican, right? So from my entire 6 to 12, I thought God was Mexican. If his name is Emmanuel, it got to be Mexican. Because all my friends are Mexican, right? I didn't know what that meant. I actually didn't know what it meant until I was about 14, 15 years old. That means God's with you. God is
Mhm.
with us.
Mhm.
And he was telling me that he was with me this entire time. And as an only child, I would throw the ball against the wall, or I'd throw the ball outside and catch it and act like I was playing with God. So I've known him as father for a really long time, which is actually how my entire ministry right now has been developed. Because that's what I teach men, specifically men, but overall, how to rest in God as a father. So your whole dad up podcast in regards to what it means to be a man and how to be loving and kind and structured and all this other stuff. I actually learned that from the Lord.
Hmm. That's awesome. I think that when a child, especially a 6 years old, really starts to develop that relationship with God, I think it's remarkable. And it really starts to show a change in that child. That child really starts to evolve into somebody different, somebody new. And for you, you didn't have a father figure in your life. I mean, you did, but he was in another country. So you really didn't have that role model to really
Yeah.
model after. And the fact that you kind of seeked it out from your heavenly Father is awesome. How tough was that as a 6 year old to know that, hey, I'm here, my dad's over there, and I mean, was there a message of like, does my dad even love me anymore? Does he even care about me anymore that he's not here with me?
Yeah, that's my foundational trauma. So
Mm.
most people identify whether your various traumas. I ask people, what's your foundational trauma? My foundational trauma was feeling neglected from my father, not knowing that. So grew up my entire life not having him, and kind of just made excuses for not having it. I'll talk about how amazing my mom was, or I was an athlete. So I'll talk about me winning a athlete of the year, or doing whatever I want at the time. I would negate it to that. I would negate it to my winning different awards for just tests that I did, because I was like California State gifted, which helped me actually, because I was in a lot of trouble when I was younger.
Mm.
But absolutely, that was my biggest trauma, and I must say I didn't get healed from that trauma until I had my own child, and
Mm.
I had my first child at 21. So my wife and I had our first child. I was 21, she was 22, and that's actually what allowed me to say, wait, hold on, I need to work on me, because I got to figure out I didn't have this role model other than what I know God to be, just loving, kind God. But I have this role model. The misconception sometimes when people hear my story, they hear that I knew God and I was been in the church since I was 2 and I followed God. Well, I was backsliding. For those who don't know what backsliding means, that just means being a Christian but being in sin. And I was doing that from 13 to 21.
Mm.
And that's because I knew God as dad, but didn't know him as Lord. So I didn't follow him in regards to all the Christian stuff. Don't drink, don't have sex, all these various things to not do, right? I just do what I want. He's dad. So sorry,
Mm,
dad, go to church on Sunday and apologize. And then on Monday, I'm back to doing my same old thing. So
mm,
that relationship I had with him was such a loving, kind, grace relationship, but I wasn't really following him like that. And then my father and I, we didn't get back together in true relationship, till I was 19. And when I was 19, I was only in relationship with him because he was in an accident and became a paraplegic.
mm.
So then it went from not being taken care of by a man to then having to take care of a man. Now, in the midst of that, it goes back to what Josh Ship often teaches about. He talks about every successful child had one caring adult in their life. Well, I had a bunch. I had a neighbor. This guy was a white Canadian, and
Mm.
he's my dad to this day. I call him my godfather. He's my dad to this day. A white Canadian actor. Didn't know why he was even in the hood. He used to try and help the gang members and tell them like, hey, don't do that or don't fight anymore, type of thing. Just this kind guy, right? And he's my dad to this day. And he was my father figure in this entire time. He taught me how to ride a bike, throw a football, catch a ball, speak, be cordial, all these various things. So I had a father figure, which was my neighbor. So I always say that. I was so blessed to grow up around both blacks and Latinos in a neighborhood that was kind of rough, but we got along really well. And then to have a white dad. So then I'm like, I'm everyone's good to me. When
Mm.
people used to talk about, oh, I don't know if this white guy is racist or this one, I didn't even understand what that could even mean because I knew a white guy who loved me with all his
Right.
heart. So I couldn't even understand what racism even really meant. How could that even be? So I was so blessed that even though my dad wasn't involved, the Lord gave me someone who filled in the gap extremely well.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's cool. I mean, you guys it sounded like you grew up in kind of this diverse set of cultures and had those experiences. And the fact that, you grow up and then realize you have to start taking care of your dad after his injuries I mean, it's almost like he wasn't there to take care of you, but now you have to be there to take care of him. And
It was a humbling experience.
yeah, yeah, that's really neat. Is he still around? You still have a relationship with him, or?
So between then and 2016, we had an amazing relationship. So he passed in 2016.
Hmm.
He lived in Belize. Belize doesn't have great medical care. It's literally a miracle that he even survived that accident.
Hmm.
His spine was severed, but it really allowed him to humble himself. It allowed me to humble myself, and we just grew together and had a bond. We like everything that he wasn't when I was little. He was when I was 19.
Hmm.
It just so happens that now I'm taking care of him, whether it be financially or physically or having things done, because there's a lot of things he couldn't do. But he was one of the strongest men I ever met. So I'm glad that the latter years of my life I was able to have with him. It's just I wish I did have him when I was younger.
Yeah, it's so important for kids to have their father in their life, especially when they're younger. And for you, I'm sure that he probably expressed some sorrow that he was, expressed him being sorry for not being there for you as a child before he passed. But the fact that you guys were able to kind of reconnect and rebuild that kind of that bond and make sure that love was there is awesome. And
Yeah,
for
true
me,
blessing.
my dad was in my life he's been in my life my whole life. I mean, he's still around and all that, but he wasn't real super involved. And you talked about kind of that missing that piece of having a father figure in your life that really drove you to change who you wanted to be as a dad. I had kind of the same experience where my parents were, and to this day, they're still married, they're still together, all that. I still talk to them and all that. So we just don't have a real solid relationship, but they were never around. I played all these different sports. I can count on one hand how many sporting events they came to that I participated in. I used to ride to practices and games with my friends' parents because they didn't go, all those different things. And I knew very early on that when got older and was going to have kids, I think I was probably a mid teenager, maybe early teen. I knew that when I got older and started having kids, that I was going to be as involved as possible. And I can count on one hand how many things I've actually missed for my boys. That's how
Yeah,
active I've been in their lives. And it's important because it will really start to, especially when the kids become teenagers, if you don't have a strong relationship with them, before they hit those teenage years, when they're teenagers and they're starting to go through different changes, not only physically, but emotionally and all that. And they start to hit challenges and maybe they start to get into a little bit of mischief or trouble. If you don't have that strong connection with them, they're just not going to turn to you. They're just not going to come to you because you weren't there for them and they can't
Yep.
rely on you. They can't trust you. And so
Yep.
my boys always knew that. And to this day now, I mean, they're grown adults, yet they're two of my best friends. And I think that's
Yeah.
because of the way that I was involved with them. So I mean, you're talked about it with your dad. It's really drove you to who you are as a man, as a father to your own kids. Let's talk about that a little bit. How's the relationship? How's the dynamic with you and your own kids?
Yeah, actually, it was almost a blessing. So you look at it, hindsight's 2020. So you look at it, and it's your foundational trauma. It affects your life. It allowed me to have all this anger in my life and built up
Mm,
frustration that I didn't really know I even had. I felt so neglected by my dad. And didn't really even know any of that. I just was living life and living life within a trauma experience. But what it did was it allowed me to be everything I didn't have is who I am right now.
mm,
So even yesterday, I was on doing a training. I had various meetings. I have several clients. I do all these various things. And I came home and I was tired, but my son had asked me to go to the pool the day before. Right. So then I came home saying, let's go to the pool, son. Right. And it's not that I'm that good of a dad or he's so nice. It's the fact that I know what it felt like to be an 8-year-old and to not know how to swim because I didn't have a dad to teach me how to swim.
mm,
Yet my son knows how to swim, has a dad, and has a pool. Let's go to the pool, son. So a lot of my formation of who I am as a father, and even who I am as a father to other kids, because I father any kid that's around me.
mm,
All my kids' friends, I father, and I try to take it actually deeper than fatherhood. I teach my clients that it goes deeper than being a dad. It's about discipling your children. So I'm leading my kids in such a way that they know how to follow Christ. Now they can make their own choices, but I'm leading them so that I'm a role modeling, living the word with them, speaking over them, praying with them, seeing how I treat my wife, loving on my wife so that my son can role model that, loving
mhm,
on my wife so my daughter knows what that looks like. So the hope is not just to be a dad and a good dad and a good father, but literally walk with them hand in hand and disciple them in regards to what it looks like to have a relationship with Christ. So I must say, as much as the gap was there of not having that, now I'm able to then make lemonade out of lemons of saying, okay, everything I didn't have, I'll try and do that. Now that gets in the way sometimes because my daughter has a shoe collection that is significantly ridiculous because I like Jordans and my mom couldn't afford Jordans. So I barely had one or two. And my daughter might have literally about 100 maybe. So then I learned quickly, I'm like, okay, I can't give her everything that I didn't have, especially at that young of an age. But I was 21, so I didn't know any better. But I must continue to, I don't like the word balance. I like the word harmony. I like to harmonize that into her life in regards to giving her some of the things I did have and didn't have, so she understands that.
yeah. That's cool. 100, geez, Louise. That's I can't
No,
even.
and that's a literal number. That's not makeup.
Oh wow. Well, that's awesome. I mean, listen, you didn't have those experiences when you were a kid, and it's okay for us to uh, give our kids things to enjoy if we can provide it to them, if we can afford to, and all that. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you work hard for your money, all those kinds of things. If you want to give your kids the things that you didn't have, that's okay. But you got to draw the line at some point when it comes to the differences between spoiling them and understanding respect and boundaries as well. And I'm sure that you and your wife both have instilled that in your kids clearly. So that's awesome. I do want to ask you about when it comes to your relationship with your wife. You just talked about how you want to be a role model for your kids and show them how a man is to love a woman and take care of a woman. And the same applies for a woman. A woman needs to do the same for the man. And that's a
Yeah.
perfect example of how we as parents need to be as role models to our kids, because we want to, like you said, you have a daughter and you have a son. You want to show your son what it means and how you're supposed to treat a woman. And then you want your daughter to show her, hey, this is how a woman is treated. So that way, when she, has a relationship or anything like that, she's treated the same way. Um, when it comes to your guys' relationship, how do you guys deal with challenges? I'm sure that you and your wife, every marriage has challenges. I'm sure you and your wife have had them. How do you guys deal with those challenges, especially when you got a wide range of kids that you're under the household?
Yeah, so we focus on effective effective communication, not just good communication.
Mm.
When we first got married, we wanted good communication. So I hear you, you hear me, we're going to agree to disagree. We learned that that wasn't healthy. It worked, but it didn't work to this full capacity of healthiness. So it's about being fully vulnerable and listening with compassion.
Mm.
And we allow our kids to be a part of some of our disagreements. We don't really call it fighting because there's no reason for two people to technically who love each other to fight. You can
Mhm.
disagree or argue, but there's no really reason to fight per se. So we allow them to be a part of some of those things. When we had hardships or when things were up and down or when we were moving to Texas and all these various things, we really involved them in these conversations. And we're trying to be as authentic as possible. Like not like let's be happy in front of the kids and then you sleep in separate rooms type of thing.
Right.
So we want to be as authentic with them as is possible. And the Lord being the foundation of the relationship helps us to say, okay, what is true marriage? Because the very true, so I've been married 19 years. And I want to say almost half, like let's say 7 to 8 years of it. I didn't really know marriage. I love you a lot. You love me a lot. We're good teammates. We already had 3 kids under. So I had 3 kids before I was 30. So I had 3 kids before I was 30, had a business, was in ministry, had several businesses, was in ministry, and all these, and my wife had her own business as well. So we're all doing all these various things. So we're good teammates, but we weren't one.
Mm.
And what we decided is that how do we then become one? Where we're doing things together, where we understand each other, where I'm studying her gifting and her calling, and she's studying my gifting and her calling. We're pouring into each other, and then we're able to share that with our kids. The one thing I regret is I don't think in my earlier years of marriage I was affectionate enough with my wife.
Mm.
It was you run this way, I run this way. It's like a machine. When you have 4 kids, businesses, ministries, and all that, it's just go. The one thing that we did do is have dinner every night. I must say that since Jalen and she's 21 years old, I can't. I would say it's less than 50 to 60 times that we've ever not had right dinner together. It's like
Mm.
we're having dinner together, and that's where we do the highs and lows, and we get to check in on each other. And when we do the highs and lows, we're honest about it. Today was a bad day. They did not work out really well for me. I thank God for today, but it didn't work out, and we're very honest with our kids and with that. So I think it's within the effective communication within Jackie and I. Jackie's my wife, that we're able to do that.
Yeah, communication is everything. It's one of the main issues in marriages today that really helps, or I should say, that really causes struggle in relationships because men aren't real good communicators and
Yeah.
women like to communicate a lot, and so those actually kind of collide. They kind of clash. And my wife and I, it's interesting because we wanted to make sure that we had a really solid relationship so our boys could witness that as they were growing up. But we have an actual marriage coach that we go to every other month. We see
Mhm.
her every other month, and we've been seeing her now for, gosh, I want to say 6 years maybe. And we actually really enjoy going and seeing her. We spend about an hour and a half with her, and we don't go to talk about our problems. We go to make sure that we're staying on top of the things we need to be doing as a couple to make sure that our marriage stays fresh and that we continue to love each other the way that God intended us to love each other when we said I do. And so that's why we do that. And my boys know it. They know that and now our coach is actually a licensed marriage therapist. She's actually a licensed family therapist, but we call her our coach. And our boys know it. They know that we go and see this. Her name's Kathy. We know that we go and see her every other month, and I think they appreciate it. I think they understand why we do it.
I
And
love
actually,
that.
we have a meeting with her this Saturday. It's our next meeting. So, and we enjoy it. But it's really important for our boys to understand that, hey, there's going to be conflict within the house every once in a while. You
Yeah,
guys are living together
absolutely.
basically 24/7. There's going to be conflicts, but how do we deal with those conflicts and what can we learn from them, or what can we learn from the challenges that we face? And I think that you guys really understanding how to appropriately communicate is really important for your kids to witness, because when they get older and they start to go through life and things really get nasty or life hits them on the chin, they're going to know how to communicate effectively because they
Mhm.
witnessed you guys modeling it for them. So I commend you guys for that. Um,
One thing we stand on, and it wasn't at the beginning, it was the fact that so I'm a marriage and family therapist and a clinical marriage and family therapist and organizational psychologist. And what I tell people is if I were a mechanic, I want the fastest car. I want the fastest car. I want the fastest, most swooped up car if I was a mechanic. But if I'm a psychologist, I got to live what I teach. So I tried my best to live what I teach. And there were times where at the very beginning it was hard because you know it therapeutically and theory, but it's kind of hard to practice it with someone
Mhm.
else. But I want your listeners to hear this. The one thing that changed our life was when we learned to come from the place of inquiry instead of advocacy,
Mhm.
right? Changed our entire life. I've been preaching it and teaching it for a while, but it felt like my wife and I weren't really doing that. But when I came in with being curious and wonder, when I was in wonder and awe of what she wanted to know or what she was saying, tell me more. What does that look like? What's the unmet need? How could I be a better husband? Did I fail last week? Was I good last week? Those inquiry questions really allowed our marriage to strive. It was when I was advocating and say, but I took you there, but we went on dinner already, but you already got a massage. But I took the kids last time, right? So now I'm advocating for something and not even, and some people are advocating even with a question,
Right.
but they're not asking from the place of curiosity. Changed our entire life. It's a hack. So if
Right.
anyone tried it, I promise you, it's so much better. It's almost like if you and I were talking right now, I said, don't you think the Dodgers are the best baseball team in the world? And that's a question, but I'm advocating for you to take on what I'm thinking,
Right.
right? If if I really care about what you're saying, about your thoughts, Bryan, I would say, do you like baseball? And then
Mhm.
after I ask if you like baseball, the second question would be like, oh, who's your favorite team? Now it's
Mhm.
nothing about me. It's all about the curiosity and wonder of wanting to know about the other person. But I promise you, it's a hack. It
Yeah.
helps me out a lot. And I
It's
love what you
interesting.
said about maintenance. I love what you said about maintenance. I hope everyone holds on to that. Too many, too many, too many of my clients come to me with crisis. They weren't consistent. I gave them tools. They did what I said, and then they won't come to me 3 to 4 months because they're using that money for vacation or whatever that's happening right now during the summer. They're using that, and they come back to me because there's another crisis. So we're
Mhm.
not even dealing with the root issues of him or her from childhood or anything or within their marriage. We're dealing with the crisis because he slammed the door when he walked out and called her a name or something like that. And that's the crisis they come in because they don't come in for maintenance. I love when people honor their marriage enough. So we have marriage mentors. I have marriage mentors that to this day, he'll ask me, so did you contact her 8 times like we talked about today? And to this day, I still have to, in my mind, contact my wife 8 times, even if it's a text, to say, you're beautiful, I love you, because my marriage mentor told me to do that. So that maintenance helps out a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it. It's no different than your car, right? A lot of people, when do they take their car to the dealership or to the mechanic? It's when they have problems. There's something going on. Their check engine lights on or they're hearing a noise. That's typically when people take their vehicles in to get service. And sometimes at that point, it's going to cost you a lot more money to get it fixed at that point than if you had just done the general maintenance like you're supposed to throughout the life of the car. I am very big on doing that with my cars, my boys in their cars. I make sure that they take care of their cars just because I know what it's like to have issues come up and then it costs thousands of dollars later on. And I don't want that. So it's the same thing with my marriage. We don't, I'll tell you, I'll give you another example. There have been times where uh, we've been sitting with her talking about different things. And she said, I gotta tell you guys are you guys are my favorite client. I like you guys a lot and all that. I don't think you need my help anymore. I think you guys are good. I mean, you guys are good. You guys understand the tools and techniques and stuff that I've given you. You utilize them. You guys are good. So if you guys want to kind of stop, going through this, that's fine. If you guys want to continue, I'm okay with that too. But I want to let you guys know that I'm okay with you guys want to, kind of
Yeah.
stop it. And we said, oh, no, 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 no. Absolutely not. We are continuing. And she said, are you sure? And I said, yeah, we do not want to stop because we enjoy this. We actually get a lot out of it. It helps us to communicate, even though we're good communicators with each other. It helps us to continue to be good communicators with each other. So, we absolutely love it. And she's like, okay, so we've continued, but it's really important for people to understand that marriage is not easy. It's a challenge. And when you're dealing with not only two different personalities in the husband and the wife, but you're dealing with other personalities in the kids, that can cause kind of a tornado in the house at times. And knowing how to effectively manage that is crucial because your kids see it. Your kids see
Yeah.
everything that you guys are doing. And so it's important for you to model that. I want to dive in for just a minute about your uh, experience with coaching because you talked about coaching other men and coaching dads. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
How did that all start, and what does your coaching involve?
I started counseling back in 2001. I I saw at the time I was doing some illegal stuff, and my wife's like, "You need a job." She wasn't my wife at the time; she was my girlfriend. In 2001, we were like 19 and 20 or something like that, and she was already working at a bank. She's like, "You need to get a job, like get a real job. I know we have money and all this, but get a real job." So I said, "Okay." I love her. Let me listen to what she has to say. I applied for a job and it says working with at-risk kids, at-risk youth. At the time, I had too long braids. I was wearing like gang attire. I'm not sure if you're aware, but white t-shirts, Dickies, and Cortezes. So every single day, that's just, and I was already in college, a high-end student, like teaching my professor stuff because they were off on a lot of different things. I was supposed to go to that school. I was supposed to go to Ivy League school, and I lost my scholarship. I'll tell you about that later on. But I lost a full scholarship to an Ivy League type school. And anyway, so I started working with these at-risk youth, not knowing I was at risk myself, but I thought they were handicapped kids because I didn't know what at-risk meant. So I started counseling then, and I found out there were gang members, ex-gang members, taggers, juvenile sex offenders, all these various guys. And since 2001, I just fell in love with these kids. I became a gang expert. So my job was to bring in all the hardcore gang members and bring them together so that they cannot be enemies anymore. So that was like my overall goal. And then after that, I did that for about 7, 8 years. And then for the next 6, 7 years, I start working with juvenile sex offenders. That's what people label them. I don't label them as such because that's not who God made them to be, but that's what they did. So they're kids who committed a sexual crime against another child. So they call them juvenile sex offenders. That was the hardest part of my job ever in life, is to work with these kids who's talking about molesting another kid and what they did to them. But it allowed me then to just fast forward right quick, understand gang membership and being a perpetrator in some way, sexual perpetrator, allowed me to fully understand human trafficking. Right. So then, I started combating human trafficking. But the transition between that, I just kept on getting different degrees because people were always saying, "Well, you need a master's degree to do that. I can't have you lead this group." Every kid in this unit was coming to my group. I was leading all the group. You need a master's degree, so I'll just get a master's degree. So I got a master's degree, and then I started doing it on a therapeutic level, and I thought everything was great. And the Lord's like, "You're going back and you're getting your doctorate degree." I'm like, "Well, why do I need a doctorate degree? I don't even like school. I'm good at school, but I don't even like school." He said, "I'll pay for it." I said, "I can't even pay for it. Can you pay for it?" He'll pay for it. Long story short, I got a full $100,000 scholarship for my doctorate degree.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
So then I went into that. While I was getting my degree, and then I started my consulting firm. And I realized that it wasn't just therapy I wanted to do, because therapy was one family, one person at a time, that I really wanted to coach leaders. So while I was at school, I decided I want to really actually focus more so on leaders. As much as I'm going to coach families and do all these various things and work with kids, if I could coach leaders, much like a father, because if you could get a father right and then the mother right, then the rest of the family is cool, right? So if I could do that with pastors and CEOs, so I executive coach pastors and CEOs, and if I could get them right, then I could get their teams right, and then they have more influence. So I started working with coaching. So all I really did was use all my therapeutic background with my organizational management degree, and then I start putting it, and I actually turn almost everything into a family. Hence the reason why I love your podcast so much in regards to being a dad and being a father. I believe all great leaders have the characteristics of a good father. That doesn't mean these people are your kids, but you're a nurturer, and you have an authoritative, you have a safe, compassionate, authoritative right to be able to share and do different things. And those are CEOs. So I help them with that concept. So I help, and I have a very specific who. It's CEOs who are really great, and they're taking it to be inspirational. I don't really pour into a brand new person who's trying to figure it out. That's not my who right now. Kids, yes, disciple kids, yes, but CEOs and all that, not so much. But that's what I've been doing since 2015. I'm loving it. I do trainings. I teach a lot about leadership development, effective communication. And I really teach specifically in churches the concept of between what's your assignment compared to what your purpose is. And I believe, much like we are just talking about marriage, when I help people within their marriage, it's usually because they don't know who they are. So because they don't know who they are, they act a certain way and they're wearing a certain mask. I have a book coming out called Identity. And it's the concept of not believing the enemy's lies and everybody else's lies, but believing God's truth, right? And once you really understand that concept of just who you are and whose you are, then you're able to share that with people. These are things that people don't know. I ask them, what's your love language? What's your communication style? What's your sibling position? What's your trauma response? What's your anointing? What's your gift? What's your skill set? What's your purpose? What's your call? Listen, I just made that up. I'm not even reading anything. Those are 9 things. I have about 15 of them. And most people know about 3. So then how are you then going to teach someone to love you if you don't even know yourself? So my coaching concept within marriage, within leadership, is really self-awareness. And once you're self-aware, then you know how to self-manage. But I must say, most dads alone don't know themselves enough. So they don't know how to self-manage because I don't know, they don't know how little, their name is John, and they don't know how to work with the little John inside of them that's still broken because they didn't talk about being molested when they were 5.
Right.
So therefore, they don't have their kids sleep anywhere, and they're very strict, and they don't have them do anything to protect them from that. And that's not wrong. But I'm saying it's because that little John is not healed yet. That little
Right.
John in them, and within all those questions I just mentioned in regards to what's your anointing, your call, your purpose, all these various things, when you identify that, you're more of a whole person, and then you start removing the masks. What happened is most people remove a mask for another mask, right? And so they don't know who they are. I learned that at a very young age. So this is a tattoo right here. You can't really read it because it's backwards. I can read it in the mirror because it's 2 Corinthians 3:18. It says, with the unveiled, unmasked face, I'm a true reflection of Christ. That's what scripture says, 2 Corinthians 3:18. So I live that because the hope is that I'm reflecting him every day that I wake up. But it's because I understand who I am and whose I am. And it's not that I've ever made it, because it's a journey. And that's why people talk about change a lot. I don't coach change. I coach growth, right? So within growth, you will change because change is inevitable. But there's a lot of me that I still like. So it's not like I have to change little Jason. I live in a suburban neighborhood in Texas. I still wear an LA hat. I got an El Camino on 24s outside right now. Now that's a real LA gig. That's a real LA thing. I'm not changing that, but I'm also growing. I also have the suburban SUV, this other stuff that aligns well more with who I am right now. But it's not about change so much as it is about growth. And that's what I coach.
Oh, that's awesome. There's a ton there that we can unpack, but one of the things that you had mentioned earlier on that is so true is like you mentioned about if you can fix the CEOs, you can fix their teams. Well, the funny thing is that's true, but it also applies in the family culture as well. If dads aren't taking care of themselves and moms aren't taking care of themselves and they're not taking care of each other, the house kind of falls apart. And then what does that do? That trickles outside of the home into other areas of your life. I like to call it cracks in the foundation. If your foundation of your family is strong and there's no cracks, then everything else is going to be okay. But if you have cracks in that foundation, it will ultimately lead to cracks in other areas. That's no different than what you were just talking about with if you can fix the CEOs, you can fix their teams. Well, if you can help the CEOs, you can help their teams. Same thing with the family. If I can help families, that's why I coach a lot of dads. If I can help families fix those cracks in their foundations, the dads will be better, not only physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, but their businesses or their careers will be better. Their outside relationships and colleagues and the relationships that they have with their friends and all that will be better. And not only that, but they're going to have that stronger bond and relationship with their own kids. So that's awesome that you're doing that. I think it's really good. You talked about not getting into Ivy League. What happened there?
I was in a program that I was in a program. I wanted to go to Stanford, and they ask you, they sign you up with a mentor. They take kids out of bad neighborhoods that
Mhm.
had the highest IQ, and they took them out of they put them in. We were doing this mentorship program. So I wanted to be a lawyer because I wanted to get all my friends out of jail. I said, like, if, in my neighborhood, I could do that. I could be the lawyer. I'll get everyone out of jail. So I was mentored with a lawyer for about 3 years of my life. He taught me tennis. He took me to country clubs. He drove a Lexus. So my friends who had lowriders, I knew that maybe I don't need a lowrider. Maybe a Lexus might be okay because I'm in a Lexus now. He showed me classical music. He did all these various things. Really kind guy, and it was a program that they poured into you, and they wanted you to be the best version of yourself, and they wanted to give us a chance, and they gave me a chance. An amazing organization.
Mm.
And what happened was I caught in a fight at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, right where they did Pretty Woman. It's a Beverly Wilshire Hotel. I was supposed to be one of the keynote speakers, and I caught in a fight with another guy who had the same aggression and frustration, possibly didn't grow up with a dad, and all these issues running the street life and all these various things, wearing all these various masks. We caught in a fight. People were really disappointed because like things were broken, and they're basically like, we gave this all to you. How come you didn't want it? Look what we did for you. And I'm like, you didn't do shit for me. Like I could do it. I could do this for myself. Like I don't need that. And I just
Mhm.
walked away. And I learned two things that day. For one, when people give you something, really appreciate it. And
Right.
for two, really understand when you're on the other side of that, when you're giving someone, do they really want it? I did not care about the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. That meant nothing to me. And because they were condescending and kind of rude, I was like, tell with your program, I'll figure it out. And then I could have got a track scholarship and all these other things, but I knew I was getting this academic scholarship, so I didn't really go for it. So I ended up at Cal State Northridge, which Cal State Northridge is not a bad school, but definitely wasn't on my radar. But that's where I met my wife. So God has a very strategic
Mm-hmm.
plan in regards to, even though that didn't work out and I probably should have went to this school, I ended up at Cal State Northridge, met my wife, met some of my best friends to this day, 20, 21 years later, who are still in my life at Cal State Northridge. And Cal State Northridge has been nothing but a blessing to me in my life. Wow, look at that. But remember, I told you that same scholarship that they gave me, you would think it was a loss, but it's not. I wasn't able to steward it. One of the words that I love that I'm hearing you say throughout this whole pod is the fact of being a good steward as a man, as a father, as a leader, all that, right? So I wasn't a good steward, so I wasn't able to have it yet. Got my master's degree, did everything that God told me to do, poured into these kids, started the businesses, went into ministry, and then he said, "I'll pay for your doctoral degree." And $100,000 later, I got a full scholarship and my doctorate degree just paid. So it just shows you in regards to even sometimes where you're not ready. But it goes back to assignment versus purpose, right? If David was a shepherd boy and anointed king, and he thought he was supposed to be king that day, his life would not have been the same. And all the stories we read about him would have not been the same. Right. But he knew his assignment. He knew his call. He knew his purpose. His purpose actually wasn't to be king, it was just to worship God. Right. So in that whole process, he understood what that looked like. And for those who are listening right now, you don't even have to be Christian to hear what I'm saying, because it's really the concept of knowing what's my assignment right now. I've been combating human trafficking for 5 years, 6 years. If I thought that was my overall purpose, I wouldn't be in Texas right now. I'd still be with the nonprofit organization. That's amazing. We built one of the best homes in all of the United States for these kids from scratch. We did everything that, so you would think that a person would want to hold on to that, but no, that's not my purpose. That was my assignment. So let me move on to my next assignment. So men who are listening to this, really identify what's your current assignment. I tell everyone, I remember when I got my doctoral degree, I worked for a pharmaceutical company for those 3 years, because I said, how can I make a lot of money quickly and it not be too hard? So I remember I was a therapist at the time, and the person who was hiring me flew from Philadelphia. It was my last interview, and he says, "Bro, you're a therapist. Like, tell me how everyone's raving about you. How are you going to work for us? What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I work with juvenile sex offenders. And I sell them hope, love, opportunity, and encouragement every single day. So I absolutely could sell your medicine." He says, "Let's get a beer. You're hired." I say that not to brag. I say that because if I thought my assignment was just to be this therapist and talk to kids for the rest of my life, I wouldn't know that I could use that gift anywhere I want to go. Don't get stuck. Anyone that's listening to this, don't get stuck on whatever you're doing right now. If you're a teacher, you don't have to, you could teach on different levels. It's not, oh, I'm just a teacher. I'm a teacher. I can write the book about being a teacher. I can write everything. Just think outside the box and allow God to really just use you, because that might be your current assignment, but that might not be your overall purpose.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. When you're talking about that, it's interesting because I've coached a lot of kids in sports, and my boys from the ages of 4 years old all the way up through high school, and I've coached, sometimes multiple teams in one season, multiple teams a year, and so I'm talking thousands and thousands of kids that I've coached. And one of the things that I knew that my role was as a role model for them was a coach, right? My job was to teach them the sport, teach them how to be teammates, teach them how to work together. But my other role was to be a role model father figure to them as well. Yeah. They would still, regardless of them not living with me, because they're other people's kids, right? I'm just coaching them, but they still have to see what I'm doing, and they're still going to model what I do. If I was a nasty coach to other coaches that I was playing against, or nasty to the referees or whatnot, kids are going to see that, right? They're going to see how I act, and they're going to think that that's okay to act that way. So I still had to be kind of this father figure in their lives and show them this is how an adult acts, and this is how you handle your responsibilities and things that are going on around you. So I think that's awesome. When it comes to your career and the things that you've done in your life, one of the other things that you talked about that I think is really important for people to pick up on, especially men, is that we as men have a lot of back trauma in our lives, and you've talked about it a few times now on the podcast. But we have a lot of trauma in our lives from when we were younger that tends to carry us into our adulthood. And some of the issues that we have as adults, meaning husbands and dads, some of the issues that we face is due to these early childhood traumas. And we haven't learned, like you said, you compared it to taking off different masks and finding another mask. We haven't learned how to manage those traumas, and we learned how to really, I guess, heal from them, right? And that's one of the things that my marriage coach has talked to us about. Some of the issues that I've had over my life with my wife or with our family, some of the dynamics that have caused a little bit of conflict. And listen, every marriage has conflict, right? We have conflict,
Yep.
but
Yep.
some of those issues tend to come from my behavior, my actions, my responses to those issues tend to come from how I was raised and the things that went on in my childhood. And I didn't realize that until we started going to her. And so I still have to manage through that and kind of work through that and figure out what mask that was when I was younger and get rid of that mask and start to regenerate a new mask and a new identity for not myself, but for my family. And so I think
Well, I
it's
love the word that you used. The word that you used was response.
Mhm.
And that's a perfect word because we're responding to something, but oftentimes we're actually even not responding, we're reacting to something.
Mhm.
So most people call it triggers. I don't even allow my clients to use the word trigger. I'd say it's a trauma reminder
Mhm.
because often, if not always, and I almost want to say always, it's a trauma reminder. So even if your wife comes in like, how come you didn't clean up the house? It could be a trauma reminder from what your mom used to do to say to you when you were a
Right.
younger boy, and you would always get you frantic or something like that. So if we understand our trauma response, and that's where this really comes in, this is where psychology really works. Fight, flight, freeze, and no
Mhm.
one talks about this. So for those on this podcast, it might be the first time you're hearing this, and fawn.
Mhm.
Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Whatever your trauma response is as a kid is now your coping mechanism as an adult.
Yep.
When you don't use it in a healthy way, it becomes your defense mechanism as an adult, right? Let me go back to fawn. So we know fight and yell, or just being aggressive, right? Flight is not just running away. It's I'm ignoring you. I'm not calling you back. I'm sleeping
Mhm.
in another room. I'm not texting that person back. I'm not
Right.
responding to that person. I'm not going to talk to my brother for the next month. Freeze is I don't know how to make a decision. I don't know what to do, and I feel stuck. And when anything's overwhelming, I just get stuck. Fawn, which most people aren't fond of, is the fact that it's a type of surrender. It's a yielding. A lot of kids who have actually been molested or raped, sometimes, or even adults, it's a fawn. It's like, all right, just get it over with.
Mm.
And it's when my father's here and he's not talking to me, and I'm hoping that he can talk to me, but he's going to leave. I'm just going to stay right here and see if he talks to me. It's a
Mm.
fawn. And those people are people pleasers. They're always working towards I have to do something for people to love me, right? And
Mhm.
so most people don't even know fawn, and a lot of people are fawn. Now, because it's performance based, now the wife is, I'm just going to surrender to whatever he says. And he thinks that he's dominant over her, but she's just really not even paying attention.
Right.
So we have to really understand that those come in to where we're at right now, unless we heal it. And unless we heal it, when she says something, I'm going to want to be right. Instead of effective communication to understand her, my trauma response is fight. So I'd rather be right than be in harmony with her. Because I got to be right. Because if I'm not right, then I'm wrong and I feel bad about myself. But if
Mhm.
I identify the fact that, no, I'm not wrong, or I don't have to be bad, I don't have to think about myself in a negative way, let's just talk about it and let's communicate, right? Then I don't have to fight. But our
Mm.
trauma responses is really important. And it's not that any of the trauma responses are wrong, it's just knowing that we have it. So that's really important, as well as communication style and love languages. I would say that most people come into my office just because they don't know each other's love language,
Mhm.
signaling position, and and communication style alone. Those three things. Now you can add stuff into it. Those three things alone is why people are in my office.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that a lot of, especially, I say men a lot because I'm a man, and I know how a man reacts and thinks and how things happen or transition in his life when he gets older. But for me, for other men that are out there, when you're dealing with or reacting to or responding to something that's going on in your life as an adult, it's a direct reflection of how you were as a child. So, like he said, he was talking about your response is basically from a response that something happened to you. Like he compared, why didn't you clean up the house, to your mom yelling at you about not cleaning up the house when you were younger. So that's a direct response because that's a direct reflection of how we were raised. So it's really important for men to understand that concept because I didn't. And to this day, I'm still trying to work through those things with our marriage coach. She'll say, well, you reacted this way or you responded this way because you mentioned to me last year about something with your dad that happened. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is like mind blowing how it just kind of it all links together. So how do we fix it? We just have to rework that response, and it takes a lot of work, man. You can't just do it in one thing. You can't just go, okay, I'll make sure I respond this way. No, it takes a lot of work because it's ingrained in you how you responded when you were younger. It's ingrained in you your whole life. It's your identity, right? So you have to change your identity, and it's so tough to do. But as long as you continue to work at it and acknowledge it and continue to move forward, you're going to be okay. But it does take a long time. Oh, I want to, we're running out of time here, but I thank you so much for being on. I was only planning on like 30, 40 minutes, but we've been carrying on here and I feel like we could continue on for another whole nother hour. I want to give you a chance to kind of let my listeners, viewers know where they can find you, best places if they want to have questions or something like that, best place to find you and reach out to you and all that kind of stuff. So I want to give you a chance to talk about that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Best place to reach me is possibly Instagram because DM me, I'll DM you back. I often do daily times where I have people just ask me any questions and I try and do a video response in regards to that question. So if you have any of that, I have a lot of free information on my Instagram as well. Much videos like this, I talk about different things. I like to change perspective. Some people would say like communication is key. I'm like, that's just gruel talk. That's not accurate. So it's the concept of understanding is key, right? So not just the communicating it, but understanding it. So things like that's on my Instagram. So that's Dr. Jason Plunkett. So just Dr. underscore Jason underscore Plunkett and on Instagram. I have a website. So for my company is called True Solutions Consulting. If you're a leader and if you are open for coaching or open to any type of leadership development or anything like that, please go to my website. That's just drjasonplunkett.com. My email is the same thing, drj@drjasonplunkett.com. I currently live in Dallas, Texas. I too am launching a podcast, so I look forward to you being on, Bryan.
Oh yeah, I'd
so when
love
you're
it.
in Dallas, I really want to bring you on. I want us to be face to face. I'm telling you, I can feel our synergy right now in regards to our heart for men, and my heart is for men. I love people, but I believe that if we can really, men are the answers and the problems of almost everything. So I believe if we can continue empowerment and love on men and father men, and I think that the heart of a father is what we really need to be taught. And once we're able to do that, and for those who are listening right now, and disciple someone, like mentor someone. No one could be mentored or discipled by me unless they're mentoring or discipling someone. So I had a guy the other day. He's only about 25 years old and trying to make it. He's huge entrepreneur, doing all this other stuff, but doesn't know how to father. So I said, well, just go throw the ball with a kid who has a single mom who has to work. Take him to the park and teach him how to throw a ball. Like you don't have to disciple in a way where you're getting scripture, you're teaching stuff. Just throw the ball. That's what my neighbor did, and he's my father to this day. His life, he has forever changed my life just by teaching me how to ride a bike. So I just want to end with that. And if you don't mind, can I do one psychology 101 right quick right before we go? Because I think it's really important. All right, so psychology 101. Everyone, I'm going to speak fast, so listen fast. All right. So everything starts off with a perception. Okay, so your perception leads to your thoughts. You don't feel it first. You can't even physically or mentally, emotionally feel it first. You have to think it. Your perception came from your formative years of life. So exactly what Bryan's talking about in regards to how we were young and how our formative years, how it relates to who we are right now. So your perception leads to your thoughts that then lead to your perspective, which is your mindset. So when the gurus tell you, change your mindset, no sleep, no eat, go hard, that's BS. That's not true. You actually have to understand where that mindset first come from. And that's your perception within your formative years. So you can change your mindset if you change your perception, but your mindset then leads to your feelings. So then you feel it. After you feel it, then you will hopefully feel it. Sometimes we avoid it, we push it down, and we do all these other things, but then we have to emote it. That's your emotions. So that's how you feel your feelings. Emotions, people are like, oh, you're all up in your emotions. No, you're all up in your feelings, and you have to feel those feelings, and then you emote it. Your emotions lead to your actions. Your actions lead to your behavior. Your behavior leads to your habits. Your habits lead to your personality. Your personality leads to your character. If you want to change your character, change your perception. It's a very simple equation. And what that looks like is just a young boy growing up in the hood, not knowing who he is with no father. So my perception is that I got to protect myself because I feel scared, but I don't want to tell everyone I feel scared. So that leads to my thoughts. Every day when I walk around or I see a prostitute or I see someone smoking weed or sniffing coke or smoking crack, that's my thoughts of like, okay, I'm scared, but I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need to protect myself. My perception is ain't no one gonna do nothing to me, and that's how I can put on this face that easy. Ain't no one gonna do anything to me. So now I'm wearing the mask of like I'm going to protect myself. So that's my perception. That's my mindset. My feeling is that I'm scared, but instead of being scared, I showed anger and rage.
Mm-hmm.
I wish you would. So I'm gonna hurt you before you hurt me, right? So then that leads to action, fighting, bullying other people, making sure people don't understand that action turns into behavior, fighting more. That turns into habit. Yeah, now I'm known to be a fighter, whether it be at a club or anything like that. So he's the guy who's going to ruin the club or he's going to be tough. It's all about that. That then turns into my personality, my character. I'm known as this guy who's tough and this alpha guy who thinks that he's better than everyone else, prideful and arrogant character. How do I change that? My perception. My perception is God says, you're a sweet man. Back in the day, I wouldn't even use the word sweet. That wasn't even masculine enough for me to use the word sweet. No, I can now say I'm a kind, sweet, giving father. I'm a loving. I want to help people. I'm a healer. I want to add value to this world. Significantly different than when I was a kid. So my perception changed my character. Anyone on here who's struggling with anything, identify where your perception first came from, fix that, and your character will absolutely change with it. So thank you so much, Bryan, for having me. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, awesome. Let me just finish up with what you were just saying right there. That what you just talked about, and from where you were to where you are now, was not an overnight shift. And that's the
No.
same thing that I was telling the viewers and listeners earlier, is that it's a lot of work to change who you were to who you are today, and you have to continue to work on it. I'm sure for Jason, he's still working on it. There's still different things that he's working on, not only physically and emotionally, but also mentally and spiritually. There's still things that he's working on. So it's a constant, just continuous work that you have to do. It's like going to the gym. If you want to get bigger muscles, you can't go to the gym for 1 week and expect it to just happen. You have to continue to go and continue to go and to continue to go. So thank you very much, Jason, for sharing that stuff, for not only speaking to my viewers and listeners in the way that you did, but also, helping me understand a little bit more of how to really respond or react to who I am as a person now, and how to continue to evolve and change as a human being. And not only that, but as a husband and a dad. So thank you very much for doing that, brother. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. And I hope you and I can stay connected for a long time. I'm sure we will. So I'm looking forward to us continuing that friendship.
Yeah, thank you for what you're doing. It's needed.
Appreciate it. Listen, guys, it's been another episode of Dad Up. Thanks again to my good friend, Dr. Jason Plunkett, for being on the show. Listen, if you want to check out what he's doing, see more things that he's doing, you can check it all out in the show notes below, the links that are there. You can send him a question if you have questions. I'm sure he will respond to you. He's very active, especially on Instagram. He's very active on there. Unless you send him a very weird message, I don't think he'll respond to that. But if you send him an honest, true question, and you have something legitimate that you want to talk about, I'm sure he will reach out to you. Not a problem at all. And for anybody out there that is struggling with sex trafficking in some form or fashion, please reach out to Jason as well. He's connected with a lot of individuals and a lot of organizations. I'm actually really good friends with one of the organizations that he works with specifically. So if you're having issues, or you know someone that is stuck in a situation where they're dealing with the sex trafficking situation, please reach out to Jason, and let's see if we can help whoever it is that needs to be helped, because I love that mission of helping, especially the younger kids that are stuck in these areas. I love that mission. So thanks again to Jason for doing that. And guys, listen, if you are not yet subscribed to my show, please make sure you do that so you don't miss any of the awesome guests that I have on each and every week. And as always, I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode of Dad Up. Wow, another amazing episode in the books. So much was shared, and I'm truly grateful my guest was able to pour into you to help you elevate your dad game and really dad up. Make sure you bang that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're here, please don't forget to leave me a rating and a review. I always appreciate the feedback. And one last thing, don't forget, your role as a dad is one of the most important roles you have. So if you need a little help or have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on my website at daduptribe.com or at my Instagram page at Dad Up Podcast. Until next time, everyone, Dad Up.